What's up, bikers? Episode 217 of the Biker Bar podcast. And here we are today with Odyssey Optis inserts. And if you haven't heard of them, they're doing something a little bit different or a lot of bit different on the insert side of things. So let's go ahead and talk real quick about some of the sponsors of the show and the channels. As you know, I've been riding the RE bikes lately, and they just dropped a new dirt jumper called the 801. So if you're thinking about a dirt jumper and you haven't checked out what RE has, swing over their website, take a look at it. Outside of that, as you know, I've been a longtime supporter of the Cali stuff and Cali Protectives. They have a helmet called the Maya, which has been pretty much my favorite helmet for years now. Not super expensive. It's only $100, but if you use the code B1Cali30, you'll save 30%. So $70 for a sweet helmet. It has a LDL in it, which is their equivalent of a MIP system, and super comfortable helmet. Comes in a bunch of rad colors. So if you're thinking about it and you don't want to, if you're thinking about a new helmet and you don't want to spend a lot of money, swing by CaliProtectives.com. Also, they have a crash replacement warranty that if you crash it, they'll send you a new one. All you have to do is send this one back to them. So they like to look at the crashed one so they can see if there's something that they should modify or whatnot. So yeah, it's a win-win. So anyways, let's move on. Also, Tasco, I've been wearing their gloves and shorts and stuff, and they just released the Ridgeline X, which is a new glove. It's got its biggest feature is it's got little magnets in the cuffs, so you can like stick them together or like stick them to the side of your truck or hang them up on the wall. It's kind of a little kitschy thing, but it's a little fun. Outside of that, it's got a shorter cuff than the old Tasco ones, which I like, and it also has a thumb wiper or a thumb wiper. The thumb has cloth on it, so you can like wipe your nose or whatever, and that's nice. So a nice little addition there. I've been wearing these gloves a lot lately, and pretty stoked with them. If you're interested in trying them out, swing by TascoStoke.com and use code BIKER, B1KER, save a little money. Last but not least, as you know, we've been working on this EMTB fundraiser, or I've been working on it with D2R Vets. It's a nonprofit for veterans and gets them out doing activities like snowshoeing, skiing, fishing, golfing, surfing. They do all kinds of stuff, but I've been helping out with the mountain bike side, and we're trying to raise money to purchase some e-bikes. And so far through this fundraiser, we have raised enough money to buy the first one. So we should be doing that here shortly, but we still need to, what the goal is to get one in each size, so that when we go out, we have these different events that we can get people out for the first time. And the, let's just call it the physical restraints of mountain biking when you're new aren't really much of an option whenever you're on an e-mountain bike. So it's been really easy for us to take people out. One of the veterans that was at the last event was an amputee from the knee down. So being on an e-bike really helps. So if you're thinking about maybe canceling one of your Patreon memberships to somebody else, and they're like, hey, I got an extra $5 a month, you can sign that up for monthly over on the website here that's in the show description, or you could do a one-time thing like, hey, here's $100, tax write-off, and there you go. Anyways, let's go ahead and stop talking about this stuff and start talking about bikes. How's it going, George?
It's good, thanks.
Good. You're over in the UK, right?
Yeah, and it's unseasonably warm today, so I'm absolutely sweltering.
Oh, nice. What time is it there? Because it's morning coffee time for me, so it feels odd. Like you should have a beer or something.
Yeah, it's 4:15 in the afternoon here, so probably nice, a bit early for that for most people, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, so you're what do you do over at Odyssey? Put it that way.
I suppose I'm the chief engineer, so I do the engineering side of stuff, production engineering, design engineering, and then we have sort of design team. So stuff goes back and forth, and we organize stuff, and so I make bits and pieces, I draw bits and pieces, I do a few sums, and hopefully come up with ideas that are going to make things better.
Yeah. I never had heard of Odyssey as a company, and I think a lot of guys that are into mountain biking rode BMX when they were younger, and somebody like my age, I I didn't know that company was around whenever I was younger. Like the big players back then were like Haro and GT and Mongoose, you know. And so whenever I saw a video for the inserts come up, I had zero clue like what the background of the company was. And I would imagine that a lot of the people that are strictly mountain bikers, maybe not as familiar with the company as well. What can what's kind of the history of Odyssey?
Odyssey, it started up with products like the gyro and stuff like that. This is back in the late 80s.
I remember that. So that you could spin your bars around without the
exactly. So
yeah.
So they did that, and they did a lot of wacky colored things. And BMX in those days was, as you say, GT and Haro and Mongoose and everyone, and it was huge. You know, every kid had a BMX. Everyone was riding everywhere. It was brilliant in many ways. And then the riding progressed a lot faster than the bikes did. So you end up with a situation where the bikes just could not take the way people were riding. So you would go out and you would ride and you would destroy your bike, and then you couldn't afford to mend it, or you were just sick of mending it. And people drifted off and did other things. And it was a sort of dark time for BMX. But
yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, why BMX fell off the way that it did, you know, because you're right. In that time frame, it was like, that's what everybody did. And the only thing I can come like to mind was like skateboarding was kind of coming up. Rollerblading came out. They had like a little blip, but they I think maybe skateboarding was the thing that kind of got more like poppy and trendy at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of that. The nice thing about skateboarding, which is always a great thing about skateboarding, is you ride your skateboard and it flies off down a flight of steps, and you just pick it up and it works, and you go again.
Yeah.
and it's cheap and it's accessible. You can get on a bus and go to a skate spot. It's really easy.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a bike, you get punctures, your chain breaks, and in the old days, your headset was constantly loose. If you used pegs, you just bend the axle straight away. So it was just almost as much about fixing bikes as it was about riding bikes.
It's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that, because I have pretty much always like worked on my own bikes, but I think it was because of what you just said there. When I started out, I was a young kid. I was working on I was riding BMX, and we had to fix it if we wanted to keep riding it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was definitely like, but I never really put that together. So then that way, whenever I got older and I got into mountain biking, it was like, no, it makes sense. This is how you do it. You got to fix this, you know?
Yeah. And so, the bikes, as I say, the riding progressed. People were doing big jumps. People were starting to do street riding, and the bikes were not up to it. And the geometry and everything about them just wasn't up to the job. The tires were everything was terrible. Headsets were terrible. And it really went underground for probably about 10 years, where it was just riders building their own bikes, little companies springing up, which is what I did. I started my own company making hubs. This was one of the big problems I had. It took that sort of 10 years for riders to design their own parts, make their own parts. Everything got really heavy for a while, just to make sure it was strong enough. And then it sort of came back to a more reasonable level. And nowadays, largely thanks to companies like Odyssey, which I can say because that was happening before I joined Odyssey, we now, and work I did as well, we have a point where you can ride your bike like a skateboard, and you can throw it down a flight of steps and just pick it up and expect it to work, and it almost certainly will.
That's awesome. It's definitely I feel like BMX, at least in my eyes, like the racing aspect of it is definitely starting to make more of a comeback. I'm starting to hear more like parents that are doing that with their kids. I don't see the more of the street riding, kind of like what I grew up doing, which would be like doing tricks more like street or even dirt. It seems like the mountain bike or the dirt jumpers kind of in that space now? What's your perspective from somebody that works in that industry?
I would say BMX street riding is still very much alive and well, and
Yeah.
very out there, you know, and park riding and park competitions and stuff. And, you know, people who, you know, when you ride BMX and you ride street and stuff like that, it's very easy for it to become as an overwhelming obsession and go, I'm going to do this, I'm going out, I'm going to do, you know, there's this, I found this handrail, I found this flight of stairs, I found this whatever it is. And, you know, it's like the bicycle equivalent of parkour. So, you know, you go out and you use what you've got. And if you've got a skate park, that's great. And if you've got some dirt jumps, that's great. But if you haven't got some dirt jumps, maybe dig some dirt jumps. And, you know, if you haven't got a skate park, maybe you can find a bit of abandoned land. It's very DIY.
Yeah, that's, I mean, basically the way that we rode as teenagers was you just go kind of around town to different, I guess you could say, features. It'd be like, oh, there's this set of stairs here, or there's this dirt jump over here that'll like jump you over this alleyway that would be maybe like being a big tabletop, or you know, like, and then go somewhere else and do this and go somewhere else and do that. And it was definitely a lot of fun, and it's definitely
yeah, and it still is.
yeah, definitely.
It's still out there. It's still great.
I haven't ridden like that in so long, and it makes me feel like, man, I should go out and give it a shot, because the bikes are like you were saying, so different now compared to what I was riding before. Like a friend of mine, and he's 50, I think. And he started getting into BMX racing, and just like even the race bikes they're like $2,000 for like this something in my mind back in the day was like, oh yeah, BMX bike, that's like $200, you know?
Yeah, but that BMX race bike that's $2,000 is probably the equivalent of a $9,000 mountain bike.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's still good value, really, and you can be in it for $400. You can get a good bike.
Yeah. So, so you joined on with Odyssey after you were working with your hub company for a while?
So I was making hubs, and I had a whole lot of other stuff I wanted to make. And just as a one-man team, you know, as a small business, I couldn't sort of make this leap to being able to do a whole load of projects. But I worked with Odyssey on some stuff we could do together, and the guys there were so reasonable. They were so into it. They were riders, and you know, we were on the same wavelength. And I was like, so after a while, I just said, look, do you want to buy me out? And you know, you take the brand on and do the G Sport stuff as well, and I'll do design stuff for everything. And so they've been doing that for like 15 years now, and it's really good.
So were you all self-taught on that, or did you go to school for
No,
that?
I did I did mechanical engineering at university. Came out of university and almost straight away started. I had like 1 year working for a circus, and then started my own company. Yeah.
Oh, right on. Like a real circus,
no, like a right on vegan circus. No animals.
I was like, man, what do you engineer there?
I made stilts and bits of aerial equipment and things like that. And performed, you know, rode unicycles and stuff.
So you decide to get together with them, and like, was it, you know, initially you just started working on these additional products now that you had kind of more a support team, or was it like kind of
exactly. So I mean, you know, I came on board to do engineering, to do certain projects with them, and it just snowballed from there. It was like everything they did, I had, like most cyclists, had strong opinions about, oh, we should do this, it'd be really good.
Yeah.
And they had the resources and the contacts to be able to do that stuff. For reasonable, you know, I could have made boutique parts that would have been incredibly expensive, and I'd have sold a few hundred of them. But that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to have access to proper mass production and be able to make things at attainable prices, so that, you know, everyone can enjoy it, you know.
Yeah. And so you're in the UK. Was Odyssey in the UK as well?
No. Odyssey was in California. Has always been in California. I mean, we now have a design office in Austin, so it's California and Austin. But at the time it was all just California. So I went to see them and, just, made a deal.
Yeah. That's really, it's really cool that how that comes together sometimes, life is funny.
It's just really good people that work there. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't particularly anything they were making at the time. I had a lot of criticisms of the things they were making at the time. But the people working there were all doing it for the right reasons, and they were super open to new ideas, which quite often companies aren't. It was just, if you like the people, then you can work with them.
Yeah, 100%. I always say, you spend more time at work with your like work friends than you do really during the day, like with your family, and your friends. So you should definitely enjoy where you're working because
Well, yeah, except I work from home, so
well, there you go. Yeah.
so
Well,
I'm in
if
the
you're
UK
going to
and
an
they're
office,
in America. Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
But
So
modern communications are so good. You can do so much.
you had mentioned that they were interested in doing new things, and part of the reason that we're here is from the inserts that you guys decided to come up with. Was this move into the mountain bike space something that you guys were thinking about for a while?
Well, I mean, Fairdale is another company that's within the sort of umbrella of Odyssey,
Mm-hmm.
and Fairdale came about because we're all BMXers. We all grew up riding BMX, and you get to
Right.
a certain age, and you can't ride BMX all the time. I mean, some people can actually, and I have nothing but respect for those people. I've got friends who are same age as me and still only ride BMX and are absolute hardcore on BMX.
Yeah.
But for me, I got sick of being snaked by scooters and skateboards at the skate park, and sort of back problems and stuff from being on such a small bike and things like that.
It's
And
definitely
I
not
got
as easy to take a tumble when you're in your 40s as it is whenever you're in your
it's so easy
teens.
to take the tumble, but you're not straight back on in the same way. It's jumping back up that's the problem. Falling off, I have no problem with.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so we all just got a bit older and started riding other bikes because bikes are just great. It doesn't matter what sort of bike it is. You can have fun on a city bike, high bike, or whatever bike you find, you can have fun on it. So we all started riding other bikes, and obviously with mountain bikes, you can do jumps, you can do wall rides, you can hack around berms, you can, and you've also got new stuff, and you never get snaked by a skateboarder or a scooter or some woman who's come to the skate park with a pram with the kids in it who thinks,
Right.
push a pram up and down the quarter pipes or something, because that'll be entertaining.
Right.
So it's just, you get out in the outdoors and it's lovely. So we all started doing this kind of thing, and exactly the same reason I started a company making BMX parts, which was I needed parts that worked for me. I started being in the same position with mountain bike stuff and going, well, hang on, I need this, and it doesn't seem to exist. So I started making bits, and we've all, been in the same situation. So we've made fun bikes with Fairdale, sort of dirt jumpers, and we've got the Hair Razor, the Hair Razor is the jump bike, the Elevator, which is a 29-inch wheel bike, hardtail, with really short chainstays. So for people who like short chainstays, which I think is most BMXers, it feels so much more fun. So trying to keep the fun in mountain biking, and as we get older, and I ride full suspension bikes mostly. That's where my focus is now. So it's like I'm sick of rebuilding shocks. I don't know if anyone else is, but that's something that needs fixing. You need to go more than 3-4 months before you've got to rebuild your suspension, because that's not riding.
Yeah.
So this is the way we've gone, and it's like, as we see a need for a thing, we'll try and do it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about the suspension, because if you ride a lot, the amount of hours that you're supposed to redo your suspension is very short. If you ride once a week, then it's like, oh, okay, I can see that could be a couple of months. But it's like somebody like me, I ride 4, 5, 6 days a week sometimes, and you definitely go through your equipment quickly when you're riding that much, and it gets to be like cumbersome almost, you know, where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got to do this again already.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with BMX, where I would, do a handrail or jump down some steps or crash more likely, and the bike needed fixing, and that this is a thing that needs to be sorted. And with mountain bikes, it's you go out and you have a particularly epic day, and you come out the next day and you go, is it just my imagination, or is my damper knackered now? And I've got to rebuild the damper again. And there's got to be a way of making all that stuff more durable. And especially if you're a bigger guy as well. So if you ride hard, it's a problem. If you're a big guy, it's a problem. If you're a big guy who rides hard, which is what Taj Mahalik is, who was, a pro BMXer who is on, like a big driving force behind Fairdale. So, works with this. It's a nightmare for him. Suspension is like almost a daily headache.
Yeah, I mean, I fall into those categories, so I'm definitely a bigger dude. I'm about 250 pounds. I don't know what that makes in kilos, but you probably have an idea. And like
115, 120, something like that.
Yeah, sounds good. It's usually about 2 to 1, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, definitely go through things quickly, and then also like suspension, for example, tends to not even be like other guys that are bigger than me. Like I'm at the top end of suspension usually, where like you can pump it up and make, like, if you're using air, make it decent. Where some guys that I know that are bigger than me, like there's a really popular guy on social media called Normal MTBR, and and he's like 330 or something like that. And for him to get suspension that's like dialed for somebody his size, it's like, forget about it. You just kind of deal with it,
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the situation with Taj. He's an amazing rider, and he's a big guy, and he's like phoning up suspension companies and going, you've said the maximum pressure I can put this to is 350. Can I go a bit more?
Right.
Can I have a little bit more, please?
Yeah, and I think just in general too, that and it's understandable, like, why the bike industry tends to design for people of a certain size, but the real side of it is that there are a lot of bigger riders out there, and I think it's definitely like a market that maybe isn't fully served and could definitely be served a lot better. Like, I always talk about this in terms of like gear as well. Like any guy that I know that's bigger is always like, I can't wear those shorts, or I can't find a nice shirt that's like my size, and so it's definitely awesome to see a company like thinking about those things, and in terms of bigger riders and durability. You mentioned that whenever you guys first got into like the mountain bike space, that there were some things that you wanted to fix. Was the first thing the bike that you guys decided to make, or was there some other like smaller parts that you kind of targeted in on first?
No, I mean, for me personally, the first thing was tires, and that's why I've done the Optis, and that has just taken the entire time I've been riding mountain bikes again, which is like 10 years, 12 years to work that out.
So let's talk about this. So 12 years ago, you're riding your mountain bike and you're like, this blows.
So punctures, basically.
Right.
If you have a puncture on a BMX, you're like, I've got a puncture. You stop, you change your tire, put a patch on, pump it up a bit harder, and you'll probably be fine for the rest of the day. And it's going to be, you're running your tires at 80, 90, 100 PSI to avoid punctures. But on a smooth skate park or really smooth dirt jumps and stuff like that, it's not really a problem.
Right.
But tubeless was just starting to come along, and it's like that deals with thorns and bits of glass and stuff like that. And most pinch punches are sorted. But
hang on real quick, just to pardon my ignorance, because I don't ride BMX. When you're doing tubeless on BMX, like on mountain bike, the tubeless max pressure is like 40. Is that similar?
Yeah, so most BMXs aren't tubeless. Most BMXs are running tube still.
So they're not doing that in the BMX side.
Yeah, no, so it's just patching tube. So the only punctures, I mean, you would hang up on a ramp, but quite often if you hung up hard enough on a ramp to pinch puncture at 100 psi,
the
least of your worries is that you've now got a puncture, because in many ways that hang up and that puncture probably saved you from a much worse impact. And it is still a factor. It's still a thing we look at, but it's not. So when I came to mountain biking, you can't run high pressures to protect everything and to avoid pinch punches and things like that. So
and also it just makes your ride feel just like terrible if you had your pressure that high.
Exactly. So it was early days of tubeless. So I was doing tubeless and going, this is fantastic. This is great. I can let the tires down a bit more. And I don't need to worry about pinch punches, and I don't really need to worry about thorns, and I'm getting so much grip, and it's all lovely. And then my first experience of burping a tire, which was a front tire, so I did a little jump, went to turn at reasonable speed. Front tire lost all its air within a fraction of a second. You've then got no control, and you're just down. Yeah. And I was like, hey, whoa. Oh. Sorry, my camera's just decided to turn itself off.
Yeah, no. Take a second if you want to wake it up. Or...
Does that come back?
No. Sometimes whenever that happens to me, I have to refresh my page and hop back on. But if you end up doing that, there it is.
Could you still hear me when that was going on?
Yeah, no, I could hear your audio the whole time now.
That's weird. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Appeared the camera just turned itself off. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
that's such difficulties today.
So you were talking about the burping your tire, and you were saying the last, that's about where you left off.
Yeah. So, I burped at speed and just went down, and I'm like, okay, that was a really nice pressure in my tires. I was really enjoying that, but now I know I can't get away with that. So I put the pressure back up, and then you ride and you go, oh, it's not as good as it was. And then you're trying to find that compromised pressure. So for me, it was like on the rear tire, it was like 22, 24 PSI. So it was like, if I ran 24, I was fine. I was probably going to be fine. Unless there was something really big, I wasn't going to burp, and it'd be okay. If I ran 22, I'd probably burp at some point, but it'd have so much more grip. So it was just like, what can I do about this? What's the solution to it?
And like you said, just to take a step back, like burping a tire is terrifying when it happens. I remember, like, especially like what you were saying, if it's the front tire, like I had heard guys talk about that for a long time, and it wasn't until, I really started dropping my because I always kind of ran a higher pressure because of being a bigger guy, right? And as I got, I guess you could just say better, that I started lowering my pressures, trying to get better pressure and seeing what I could get away with. And of course, just like you said, I got to a point where I was like, man, the grip is amazing. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. So it was definitely like, oh God, okay, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. I mean, this is the real sort of core of it. Is before developing Optis, my pressure choice was just the lowest I thought I could get away with. Right. Which, just to me seemed insane. You should be choosing your pressure for the optimum pressure, not the lowest I can get away with. And so, you should be, which is what I do now, is I go, well, that I can feel a bit of squirm at that. This is the pressure I like. This is where the tire pressure complements the suspension. This is where I get the right amount of grip and the right amount of rolling speed. I'm choosing from a range based on what I want, not there is a line below which I cannot go.
So as you're contemplating this and how to like tackle the problem, you said initially 10, 12 years ago is kind of whenever you started working on this. Along the way, like Cushcore came out. Were you already like on a similar path as them?
Well, I'd already started. I was well. That was probably 4 or 5 years in when Cushcore came out, and also when Schwalbe Procore came out. So they were both after. And I think there's a motocross product called Tubeless.
Yeah, and I heard about that as well. Yeah.
I think I'm not sure when that came out. I became aware of it about 4 or 5 years into development and went, I can see where that's coming from, but this is not what I want. And it was the same with Procore. I can see where you're coming from, but that's not what I want. And I looked at Cushcore and went, I can see where you're coming from, but it's not what I want.
Yeah. And just to, I guess, so before we go on any further, let's kind of give people a description of how your system works, and then we can talk about more about how you got to there. But I think there may be some people that are listening that are like, I'm not even actually sure what Optis is. So I would start it out just that, you know, it's an insert, obviously, but it has like an air chamber, almost like a tube in it, as well as some additional stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tire insert. I've got one here on a rim, but obviously that doesn't work for people who are just listening, so I'll describe it as well. So it's a tire insert, and at first glance you might think it was foam or whatever, but it's not. It's just a skin. It's just one layer, so it's not got a tube inside it or anything like that. What you see is the whole thing. And this is it's a very tough material. So it's a nylon with it's a tough nylon with a polyurethane coating on it. And polyurethane is a very tough, very abrasion resistant, but sort of rubbery material, but it's much tougher than rubber. So that is inflated onto the rim, and that hugs down as you inflate it. So as it gets bigger across the width of the tire, it tries to get smaller around the diameter of the rim. So it actually pulls itself down into the rim, and as it pulls itself down into the rim, it's also pressing out against the beads of the tire and locking those against the bead.
Right. So then it's giving you your sidewall support as well.
Yeah. So it's doing a lot of things at the same time, which is one of the problem I have with explaining to people is it does so many things you almost trip over yourself trying to cover them all. And I suppose because we've talked about the history and where I came from in terms of burping and being able to run low pressures, that's probably the thing I should really emphasize is you're not going to burp. You can just,
because of the way that it's designed, the ability to put, like, let's just call it exponential pressure onto the beads. That's what's really keeping it from being able to burp. So you could lower that pressure of the tire down tremendously, but because you have still a huge pressure pushing against the sidewalls, i.e. the beads into the rim, it's not going to pop off.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't that high a pressure, to be honest. It's not that huge a pressure, but the mechanism by which you burp is, it's not just the bead lifting off, because you know how hard it is to pull a bead off a rim when you're trying to change a tire. You know, trying to get that bead up over the sidewall is not an easy thing to do until you get another part of the bead down into the well. So because you've filled the well with the insert, there isn't any space for the bead to go into. And as well as that, you've got the hook shape of the rim if you've got hooked rims, but even on a hookless rim, it works because you're blocking the action of the bead finding a looser part, you know, down slack and coming off.
Right. That totally makes sense. Like once you said that, because like any tough tire, like the way that you change it is get the rest of the bead down into that channel so that you have more room to play with, so you can get it off the rim.
You've got to get some slack round. You're not stretching the bead. That's if you do, you've destroyed your tire, but it's incredibly difficult to stretch the bead.
Exactly.
But yeah,
so with that kind of in mind, whenever you started seeing these other products coming out, were you already in the path that you're in of or like where your product ended up with inflating something inside of there?
Yeah, it's been that for the entire time. It's been
it's always been that. Interesting.
I've always wanted a dual pressure system, so you can have I mean, ideally it would be a rising rate, you know, like you have in a suspension of your bike. Well, I like a progressive suspension, and this is trying to give you a progressive tire. And it obviously does this with quite a sort of, you've got a relatively linear part in the first part of the tire, And then as the tire starts to press on the insert and you get extra support from the insert, then it sort of ramps up. And then as you go through the insert, that it ramps up sort of at the same rate. So it's kind of a two-stage system. It's a bit like putting a volume spacer in your suspension.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and that's like the idea with all the inserts at that, you know. So what kind of pressure is it that's in the insert? Like how high is the pressure that you put
So typically it's about 30% higher than in your tire. So if you were running, say, 21 psi in your tire, you might run 28 psi in the insert. If you were running 15 psi in your tire, be about 20 psi in the insert. But obviously it's entirely up to the user, to the rider. They can tune it however they like, and you can tune it to get different characteristics depending on what you ride, depending on how many harsh edges you're hitting, depending on, you know, how often you destroy a rim. You can play with it to get the, you know, what you want, and to get it to match your suspension as well, because the tire is the first part of the suspension. It is a spring that is in line with the rest of the suspension. So you go through this first bit of spring, you get another bit of spring, you have the spring of the suspension, all those springs work together. So there's a lot of tuning to be done there. And I know nobody wants any more tuning to do. We've already got high speed and low speed compression and volume spacers and air pressure if you've got an air shock.
Yeah, there's all kinds of voodoo going on inside of that shock.
And now you're adding in 2 tire pressures, tire widths, tire carcasses, tire, you know, rubber compounds. It's a lot of variables. Really
I think the thing that really speaks to me about what you're saying is that it is a suspension device. And that was one of the things that when I talked with Cushcore when they first came out, that they really stressed. They were like, this is like not a tire protection device, like that's a side effect. But it's a suspension device. And I think what you're saying and what you're doing as well is definitely like on a whole other level, because the ability to tune it is just that's phenomenal. Because I mean, as with anything, and the ability to change it other than this one size fits all is just I really like that.
Exactly. I mean, if you think of a tire insert in, you know, when you're saying you're 250 pounds, I'm like 170 pounds. And we may well ride differently. Why would one insert be suitable for both of us, you know?
Yeah. So I'm sure the first thing that most people ask is, how do you keep from puncturing that?
By making it out of incredibly tough material. So it's as I say, it's more like puncturing the side wall of your tire than it is like puncturing an inner tube, an old-fashioned inner tube. But this material is a lot tougher than the side wall of your tire. So
I would imagine most things that you puncture your tire with too, like the likelihood of them going like through the tire and then also like being deep enough to like cut into the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sorry, you know, this, as we've made these and experimented with different materials and, you know, got to this point, obviously if it just punctured whenever you hit, you know, an edge, it wouldn't have been any use. I wouldn't have bothered launching it. So obviously it was a concern. And this material is super tough, really. And to just go back into the burping thing, because I should emphasize the lack of burping, is like, I don't think about burping anymore. So one of the problems I have when I try to, you know, explain it to people is I forget about burping, because I haven't had any issues with burping for about 6 years, 7 years. You know? This has fixed it. So I did fix the thing I set out to do. And, you know, a lot of other things as well.
So when you first started, did you, I would imagine your first challenge, like in your mind, you were like, oh, well, I could put a tube inside of this tire and then I can try to pump that up separately from my actual tire. So if I'm like trying to solve this problem myself, like the first thing I would think, I was like, okay, I just drill another stem hole into the rim and then that way I could put a tube, let's just say it's like a road tube or something like that, on my wheel, and then try to put some pressure in that and see how it goes. Is that kind of the path that you went down, or did you initially just start trying to figure out the dual valve system through one?
Yes, I mean, initially, yes, I that was how I tried, and it was the original thing I had actually was there was another valve between the insert and the tire. So you pumped the insert to one pressure and it then bled off to fill the tire.
Okay.
I spent a long time on that and decided it was a dead end in the end, and I should have given up on it earlier. And there's lots of things like that. You know, initially I had inner tubes inside a braid. So I was trying to make them myself, and I was designing machines to try and make them, and going, this is a nightmare. And I mean, even doing what we've done in the end, which now it's done, I look at it and go, well, obviously that's the way to do it. Everything's obvious after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, especially when
I had to make machines to do it.
When you're developing something, it's like you got to go down some rabbit holes. It's just the way it happens, you know. It's definitely I can relate with that, and it is funny that at the end, whenever you look back, you're always like, wow, why didn't I not think of that initially? But
and doing it myself initially, you know, it's like I was making samples and I thought, but I wasn't making machines. And it was when I went, well, I'm going to make the machine that it all started going a lot better.
So the idea was then make the machine that you can produce this with instead of making the product, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I worked out how to do it. I worked out this particular design, and then spoke to companies that did this kind of thing, and they said, we can't do that. That's not possible. Right. We'll have to do it this way. And I'm like, well, if you do it that way, it's not going to work great, but we'll try it. And we did it that way, and it wasn't great for the reason I thought it wouldn't be great.
So at this point, are you talking about like just the material? Like they couldn't use the material that you wanted?
No, it was the right material, but the way the way they were geared up was to do a particular kind of weld. These are welded together. It's an ultrasonic weld, and the way they liked to do that was a particular way, which wouldn't work for this product. And I was like, well, surely you can do this,
right?
And
so to make sense of that and just make sure I'm on the right track, in my mind, I'm thinking about how a tube is obviously not just one solid piece of rubber. It doesn't poop out that way. So it's like there's a piece where it's folded together, and then that seam is put together to make a tube, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So this patch is on the top here. This is what joins the bigger piece that goes around here.
So the way that yours is like a bigger piece, instead of those two pieces coming together, well, let's just say they come together, then you have a larger piece on top of that, like a strip of tape almost, that you could think of that is then holding them together as well.
Yeah, kind of. But you've also got to turn that into a donut shape, into a torus. And you've got to join the ends of the torus as well. And the order you do that in and things like that was quite difficult. And
yeah, it's one of those things, like as a layman, you don't think about it all, but that as you're like talking about it, it's like, yeah, man, that is not easy. Like in my mind, it's like, yeah, it's just a tube. That's got to be simple, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really the breakthroughs were sort of during COVID, and, you know, it was like you couldn't do stuff, and there was a limit to all sorts of things. And so I had the time to you know, all the factories in Taiwan were super busy trying to keep up with the pandemic demand. So I sort of had the time to, you know, the production engineering and stuff was all quiet. So I had time to go like, okay, I'm just gonna make the tools I need to make this. And then was able to sort of say, you know, to the factory that we were working with, say, who just kept saying, we can't do that. I said, well, look, I've done it, and I've done it at home with stuff I've made out of bits of wood and little circuits I've knocked up. Surely you can do it.
Right.
And then, you know, you're sort of talking on the level of equals then, of both knowing what you're doing. And it went really smoothly after that.
So as you're developing this, there's multiple companies coming out with different inserts. Was there like ever a fear that somebody else was going to come to market with your idea before you?
Yeah, I guess to a certain extent. But I knew how difficult I'd found it.
Yeah.
And we do have various patents as well.
Right.
So, and doing those patents was quite instructive because you looked back through history, and there's been similar inventions patented by big tire manufacturers, and then they haven't followed through on it. And you think, well, why have they not followed through? The idea of having a 2-pressure tire has been popular with people inventing stuff to do with tires quite a long time, because it has obvious, to an engineer, it has obvious merit, but actually doing it is quite difficult. So yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I worried that I still worry to a certain extent when somebody comes out with a new insert, a foam insert, and goes, this foam insert isn't 250 grams per wheel, which, personally I find is just an unacceptable amount of weight. It's 50 or something. And you go, 50, how can that possibly? And then you look at one and go, well, that's not going to do anything. So, yeah.
That was one of the things. That was one of the, and I keep mentioning Cushcore because I have the most experience with them. But like when they came out with their lighter weight one, to me, I was like, the thing that I liked about Cushcore was the sidewall support and what that did. And to me, when they brought out the lighter one, in my mind, I was like, you're not making a suspension device anymore. And now you're just making something for rim protection. And because it's definitely not doing what the other one did.
Yeah.
But what we kind of glazed over there just a second ago that I definitely want to talk about is the biggest complaint that I've ever had about any of the inserts is the weight. And the system that you've designed is like dramatically lighter than everybody else's.
Yeah. Because the hard work is being done by the air.
Right.
Air's, super light. So yeah, we're about 90 grams a wheel is your penalty, if you like. It's the amount of extra weight you're adding is about 90 grams, which is, it's 90 grams. You'd rather not have 90 grams on your wheel. But if it means you can get away with running a lighter rim or a lighter tire, you can potentially claw that back. And, I don't run enduro casing tires anymore. I run like a tough trail casing.
Right.
And there's kind of a blurred line there, but I'm not on a double down. I'm on an Exo Plus, or I'm on a equivalent. And that is about 150 grams saved. So overall, I'm a lighter weight, and I've got a lower rolling resistance because I've got a thinner casing tire. So
yeah, and that's the big thing there is the rolling resistance. That was the first thing that like always came to mind with like the other inserts, just to give people an idea of what that weight means. The regular Cushcore is around 250 grams for the pair, and you're saying you're about 90.
We're about 90 grams, depending on 27 and a half or 29.
Yeah. Which is it's dramatic. I mean, it's like over half the weight. So with the, let's say the same but potentially better system because of the adjustability of what you can do with that.
Yes, and it's also not a nightmare to change your tires or put into your tires, or
Yeah, let's talk about that. So when you put this on, it is deflated. So you just kind of screw in. So it has I'm trying to paint this mental picture for people. The valve is actually like a 2-part valve. So you would just stick it through the normal valve stem hole on your rim, but it has the ability to pump up the one chamber for your insert, and then the ability to also pump up the other chamber for your tire.
Yeah. So we've got the insert itself goes on as easily as a traditional inner tube goes on. So it's literally the same procedure. You put your tire on one side and put the insert in, and put the tire on the other side and pump things up. You've still got a single valve hole. So the valve that is connected to the insert comes straight through like your ordinary tubeless valve would, comes through the rim and forms your tubeless seal in the normal way. And then once that's through the rim, you slide on the black tire valve around it.
Okay. So it's not all together. Yeah, that makes sense because you wouldn't be able to stick it through there. Okay.
The valve comes through like a normal valve.
Right.
And then you have this sort of side valve that slides over, which connects through this. There's a little hole that connects.
Yeah.
So the air coming around this side valve can go around. There's like two passages inside the main valve stem.
Yeah.
One goes around the outside to inflate your tire. So
How long did that take to come up with?
Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere in those 10 years, that's
right. I mean, it's just
germinated.
there's a lot going on there in such a small space. It's like, man, that's awesome.
It's really simple. And most of these things, when you get the right answer and it's really simple, you go, well, that must be the right answer because it's so simple.
Right. And you can still pass sealant through that other valve stem that pumps up your tire.
You can still inject sealant through the other valve stem. I always recommend putting the sealant directly into the tire, depending on the sealant, because all the sealant manufacturers claim that their sealant will clog a 6 millimeter hole, sorry, 1/4 inch hole, or even bigger 3/8 inch holes and stuff.
Yeah, they all say that, but every one of us has pulled one of those boogers out of a valve stem, so it doesn't matter which one I use, they're wrong.
Well, I've got away with it. When you want to just do a quick top up and you can't be bothered, I've got away with it. But
yeah,
if
definitely.
you're putting a new setup on, you might as well just put the sealant straight in the tire. It's not going to harm you. Lots of the sealants need to be shaken to get all the little particles and stuff through, and they're the bit that's going to struggle to get in there. And it's just easy pouring a big thing in at once. It's easy to get those bits to go.
Yeah, and I think with other inserts, the reason you wouldn't want to do that is because they're such a pain in the ass to get on.
Yeah, exactly.
So
once you put Cushcore on, you just run. If that's a winter tire, you're running that winter tire till it's knackered. And if
it's definitely staying there.
It doesn't matter what season it is anymore. You're not taking it off.
Right. And you're like, I don't know if there's any sealant in there or not, but I'm not opening up to find out.
So you might then stick some in.
Yeah. But with your system, it's definitely like that's not an issue. So I could see where it's like, oh yeah, just pour it in. That's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And to break the bead and get there to do it is easy. You've not got a huge piece of foam in the way. I mean, the other thing to talk about I don't want to pick on Cushcore because, obviously I'm going to prefer my solution to other people's solution, but there's loads of foam inserts and they're all a foam that's been molded by having gas expand inside of plastic as it's made. But the thing is that's when you see that insert on the shelf or, in your hands before you fit it to the tire, that's at atmospheric pressure. And when you put it in a tire and pump air around it, you compress it. Those bubbles are a fixed pressure. So if those bubbles are at, sort of 40 psi, when you put the outside of the tire to 20 psi, it's like those bubbles are now in an atmosphere at 20 psi. They shrink to half their size. So the whole insert, although it's huge and cumbersome to put on at atmospheric pressure, once it's in the tire, it's crushed down by the air pressure around it and is not as big anymore.
I never thought of that. And then also then the way that you would shape it could change the way that it presses down once it's inside the tire as well.
I mean, it's nobody knows what's going on. Well, no, not nobody knows, but it's hard to know what's going on in the tire. If you get a small action camera and put it in there, you can see it happening. I've got a little pressure vessel I made and I put various foam inserts in and pressurize them and just you can see them collapse down as the pressure around them squashes them.
No, it's super interesting. So as you're developing this, I would imagine that coming up with the material for the insert was probably cumbersome. Or did you have something in mind right away and that one worked out? How did you come up with that?
I mean, just sort of background of working materials. I had a rough idea of what was available. And then the internet's brilliant, isn't it? You just go on the internet and you research stuff and you can, a few days of researching, you can learn all sorts of stuff. So, you look at mechanical properties sheets for the various materials and go, look, these are the properties I'm looking for. This looks like a good material. This looks like a good material. And, you find what you need.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you kind of just did a little research and were able to come to that material pretty quickly, but then the problem was trying to get them to produce it for you.
No, the material existed. It's
Mhm.
the manufacturing
No, I
team.
mean the manufacturing of the actual product then is what
Yeah.
the bigger
Yeah.
problem. Right on. So what was one of the things that was extremely difficult for you that later was one of those aha moments?
Oh, in many ways, I don't want to go over all my failures. Some of the stuff I did, I look back on it. You know, I had huge mandrels, and I was, you know, like taking a braid of various different materials, like even carbon fiber braids and stuff, and trying to put a polyurethane coat onto those and then join
So
the
you were like
ends.
making a weave of a tube and then putting some kind of
So
material
like
together.
literally, you know, trying to cure this thing, putting layers of
Yeah.
stuff on and letting it cure and putting release agents on beforehand and then removing the mandrel and having this big floppy tube of what I thought was high-tech material that I'd made and then join it together and trying to get the valves in and everything. And it was just, you know, hundreds of hours of doing stupid things, putting them on your bike, and sometimes they worked for a few months, sometimes they didn't, you know, and going, oh, you know, where can we
There had
go?
to be some point where you were just like, maybe these other companies that did these different patents over the years that quit, maybe I'm on the same path. Did you feel like that?
Yeah, to a certain extent, but I really wanted to be able to ride my bike at the tire
Yeah.
pressure I wanted. So I had the motivation, and obviously I tried out like Huck Norris and stuff like that, and Wimpact and other inserts, and went, this isn't what I'm after. You know, it's an improvement in certain extent, but I can hear it rattling around in there, or I can feel it, you know, affecting the performance of the tire. So I knew it wasn't. Yeah, I still wanted to persevere and get where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
This, you know, the reason I do this, the reason I design bike parts is so I can ride my bike and have my
Yeah.
bike be as nice as I want it to be. And
Right.
so I'll make bits and pieces and, you know, saw bikes up to get the geometry I want. And, you know, that's my driving force is, you know, I want to ride my bike how I want to ride my bike.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's like the reason for developing the product is selfish. It's like, no, I want this to be better for me, and the byproduct is that I get to sell it to you so it can be better for you too.
Well, yeah, and the only way I get, you know, I've at times I've been riding around on inserts that, you know, we've paid to have made as a prototype. The, you know, $1,000 a wheel. I mean,
Right.
it's like effectively you've got all this R&D expertise and you know, time and people helping you out and you know, companies helping you and doing stuff, making a product, and you're like, you know, this is a really nice product I've got now on my bike. My bike rides how I like. I'm a happy guy.
Right. So then at that point, I would imagine is like you have to come up with a way then to make it affordable. So how do you cross that, like that barrier?
If it was BMX, then this product would be too expensive, probably for most people. And you have this sort of snowballing thing where if something's too expensive, you don't sell many of them. So therefore, you don't have any economies of scale. So it's more
Right.
expensive. So you sell even fewer of them, and the product can never work. But with mountain biking, I think people are paying 60 quid or, you know, 70, $80 a tire even.
Right.
Because they want high performance and they know how important their tires are, and they're spending $1,000 on a suspension fork, $600, $700, $1,000 on a rear shock, thousands of dollars on a frame. So when you say we're going to be this price for a tire insert, which is pretty much the price that Cushcore launched at, people will go, if that's going to give me that much enjoyment, that money's worth of enjoyment and tire longevity, and how many carbon rims have you got to save before it's a worthwhile investment?
Right.
It's not many, you know. even aluminium rims. You save one aluminium rim, then you've paid for it. So it is more expensive than I wanted it to be. But we're
what is the retail of it right now?
It's $90 per wheel, $90 each.
Okay,
that's with the valves and everything. So that's the full setup, which I think is still the recommended retail of Cushcore. Cushcore might be a little bit less now, but
yeah, I don't even remember. It's been so long since.
And this is, it's handmade on machinery, but there's a lot of hand work on it, and it's made in Taiwan. It's not made in Myanmar or Vietnam or somewhere sketchy. We've always, the BMX stuff has to be affordable. We've always tried to be reasonable, and as volume goes up, we will be able to bring that price down a little bit. But it's always going to be slightly more expensive than the alternative. But if you're saving 150 grams, what do you normally pay for carbon handlebars or carbon cranks or anything like that to save a similar amount of weight? You tend to pay about $1 a gram, something like that, to save that kind of weight. So it's not, I don't think it's outrageous, and it's a performance product, in the same way shock or a fork is,
Exactly. It's definitely a performance product. And I think the other thing that you do have, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see how this would wear down in the same way that a Cushcore would. Like, I could ride a set of Cushcore for a fixed amount of time before it loses its like dampening abilities. It's not like the sidewall won't be as stiff as it used to be. Like, they kind of stretch out over time, and at that point, then it's like, oh, I need to buy a new set. So with your product, that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. I mean, when I've used foam inserts in the past, you come to take it out of the tire and you look at it and you go, something's been eating this. It's got big notches out of it and gouges out of it. And if you hit those gouges again, you think, well, there's no protection there anymore. So it's just a matter of time. So they are a disposable, they're a disposable item. I don't think I've ever had to replace an Optis, apart from the early days when I was still developing. But since we've been even close to this production version, the only reason I've ever changed one is to put the more up-to-date one in, and I've destroyed tires with them. So I've hit something very hard, and I've obviously had a low pressure because that's the whole point of the thing, and I've gone through the tire, completely compressed the Optis, torn the bead of the tire away, and then it's come back, and the Optis is still inflated. The tire is toast. You can't fix it when it's a rip on the bead. And you go, well, that's good to go on the next tire. That's fine.
Have you had a tire wall like some of the areas that I ride? They have really sharp rocks, and they're kind of like they break off in like razor blade kind of ways. And I'll be riding, either a double down type of tire or something like that, just because I get so many sidewall cuts. Have you had any issues with like having a sidewall cut where it punctured the Optis as well?
Oh, not for the Optis. No, I've had it on the tire, but not the Optis. No.
So you sliced the sidewall where your tire essentially has failed, but the Optis was still in place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not something I've experienced. Obviously, we're selling them now. I imagine at some point somebody's going to manage to do something. We've always people
are amazing. They will definitely find some way to break something that you never thought could be possible.
And as a company, we have a reputation in BMX for having a very good warranty, and not really needing it, to be honest. So we do lifetime warranties on our forks, and the number of returns we do is number of warranty claims we have is very low. And we don't begrudge it. People are riding their bikes. If they launch their bike off the top of a huge stair set they were thinking about doing and panic to the last minute and bend their forks, that's BMX. We'll replace it. It's and similarly with the Optis. I imagine in that scenario we would just replace it. But if there was if somebody knew that it was their fault and they were just wanted to buy a new part of the Optis, you don't need to buy the valves again. So it's all replaceable. So that, because the other thing is, all the stuff that goes to landfill is kind of, if you've got a foam insert and it's just going off to landfill, you've got to feel a bit bad about that.
Right.
So with the Optis, everything's recyclable. You can reuse you're not just recyclable as in melt it down and make another one, but like just take the valve off and put it on another one. So if you've got 27.5-inch wheels and you go, right, I'm gonna go 29, or if you've got 29-inch wheels and you see the light and want to go mullet or something, then you can just take the valve off and stick it on the other one and just buy the inflatable part, just buy the actual insert rather than buy the valves, which is like half the price.
So they're priced that way then. So you get the valve piece and the insert.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So that $90 is very roughly $45 for the valves and $45 for the insert. And that valve area is where we can potentially get the price down in the future as we get volumes up. But as I say, that's a bit you can change. So God forbid anyone runs 32-inch wheels or 36-inch wheels or whatever the next thing's going to be.
Right.
But, you can just change that valve over and not have to buy the full kit again. And
that's really cool.
Yeah.
So I like how you said once you see the light and you run mullet. You're a mullet fan?
I am a mullet fan. Yeah, a 29-inch. I'm a short guy. I'm only like 5'8". So a 29-inch rear wheel for me is just a death sentence. It's like
I'm 6'2", and I 100% agree with you. So
yeah, I've contemplated going to what I would call a super mullet, which would be 29 in the front and 26 in the back.
Oh wow!
Steve Peat did a thing where he rode a bike like that, video on YouTube, and he got to the end and he went, "That's really giving me something to think about that." I think he really liked it.
Right on. Yeah, who knows, right?
Well, it depends where you ride. If you ride long, fire roads and everything's straight, then 29 or 32 or 36 even is probably lovely. But that's not what I ride. It's not what I want to ride. Everything here is tight as you like and switchbacks, and you want to change direction quickly.
That's the thing I love about mullet. I can tell you, like the bike that I've been riding, it has the ability to be mullet or 29er, and I had something wrong, like I blew up a wheel or something. I don't remember what it was, but for some reason or other, I switched my bike to 29er for a while, and while I was like waiting for that wheel to get fixed or something, and I instantly was getting like PRs on stuff. So it definitely was faster. But when I put the mullet wheel back on, I was like, it's just so much more fun. And I just love the way that it feels that I don't care. It's just like, it's just way more fun to ride a mullet bike. Just the way that it, like you were saying, like in the tight stuff, the way I just feel like it just falls over on its like when you're turning,
I think, there's a huge marketing machine out there, and a huge emphasis on speed and being the fastest, and Strava, having PRs and being in the top 10 and everything like that, which is fun, and I have absolutely nothing against that. But when I'm riding, the fun is I've never come back from a ride and gone, that ride wasn't a lot of fun, but I got a new PR on this climb, so I'm super stoked. That's not really my thing. It's like there was this hip, and it felt like I was just tabled forever. That's fun, The size of my back wheel is more important what it does, what it does in the air and what it does on a corner than just straight line speed.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And I think that there's probably people out there that are on both sides of that fence, I definitely have some friends that all they care about is how fast they can be. But I think I'm definitely in the same camp as you, where like primarily I'm out riding bike to have fun.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part to me. And I think that's also where like devices like the Optis come into play, where it's like, does this increase my fun level? And it's like, having the grip that I want and still having the sidewall support, like that increases my fun. I'm into that. I'll pay for that.
Yeah. And it's, if you're, on a full suspension bike and stuff, if you're going through something with a lot of chatter and you've got that lower pressure, it's more fun. It is it's just better,
Yeah.
and it is
And I
faster
know,
as well in many ways. But
and it is, I know, I remember Cushcore did a study. They did like some testing with Richie Rude, and they were running, tests with inserts and without inserts, and he was actually faster with them in, because like the way that the stability was. And I say this because in my mind that makes a case for all inserts, and so I'm sure that I guess what I'm getting at it is it's definitely been proven that you can be faster with them in there because of the way that it affects your overall bike suspension.
well, I think it's it's tire pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If your tire pressure is a bit off, especially if it's too high, it's an absolute killer for forcing the bike to do more work going over little bumps and stuff. And all the road cyclists even are bringing their pressures down. And you look at things like Paris-Roubaix and stuff like that, where on the cobbles, and it's like they put the pressure down, and you go, well, we're on stuff that's way more than a few cobbles, and that coming down on pressure is going to make you faster before you even consider anything else. And I would argue that rotational weight is important as well, but yeah.
Oh, I think that's huge. I mean, just if you are a cyclist and you've got on a 29er versus just, let's say, a 27.5 bike, like you can tell the difference of getting up and going. Like it is definitely there, and so the same thing would go with putting something else inside of your tire and raising the weight of it. The less of that's in there, the better.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where tire weight, the carcass thickness of the tire is so important as well. I mean, there's so many people now running full downhill tires, and they are so heavy and sluggish. And they can give some amazing characteristics, and you can drop that pressure right down, which obviously makes, it brings the key advantage of low pressures in. But you pay such a price for it in terms of sort of poppiness and just climbing back up. If you haven't got uplift and you're pedaling back up, you really are paying for that little bit of performance on the downhill. And using something like Optis lets you have both of those. It lets you have an easier rolling tire and the lower pressures on the downhill.
It's definitely something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and because whenever I get new wheel sets, I tend to run them without inserts for a while, because I really want to know like how the wheel feels itself, and so I can have a judgment of like how this rim feels compared to other rims that I've ridden. And then later I'm like, okay, well, I don't feel like it's flexy or whatever I come to. Then at that point I'm like, okay, now I'll put the inserts in and be able to run them the way that I want. So, but because of that, like in testing a lot of tires, like what you said, I'm running a lot of time like double down or downhill tires, because I'm a big guy. Like that sidewall support, it means a lot. But then those wheels are just so heavy. It like, dude, it sucks climbing with those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, double down's a lot less of a sacrifice than a full DH tire. It really is. You get a full DH tire on. I was just shocked. I was just like, oh my god, for a guy my size, that's horrendous.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, but the difference between even like the double down and then like an EXO plus, it's a fair amount of weight there.
Yeah. And
so
it's, everyone has to find what they can get away with, what they can do, and again, it's what you can get away with. That's what you're choosing based on.
Yeah, and I think some of it, like when you're saying what you get away with is like where you're riding and what kind of like rocks or something like that. But I could think in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, there's certain, like, let's say my trail bike, I don't tend to take to the places where, like, let's just say the razor blade rocks are, right? So my trail bike, I could probably get away with riding an EXO tire, but the reason I wouldn't is because I don't have any support there. like as much on the sidewall. So running something like Optis at that point, it's like, oh wow, I could really bring the weight of my wheel down and then still have the characteristics of the ride that I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I think depending where you are, where you fall on a sort of tire, it's like if I don't have the Optis, I'm going to have to run a double down tire.
Right.
With the Optis, I'm really happy on an Exo Plus, not an Exo, because the difference between those two is striking. In that I can't get an Exo tire to last a day. But Exo Plus, that'll last till it wears out, with the Optis. So that's, as I say, that more than offsets the weight of the Optis. So that is my optimum setup. That's the lowest weight I could have with all the tunability I could want. No worry about burping. I can run whatever pressure I want. I'm a happy bunny.
Right on. So you were talking earlier about warranty. Is there some sort of warranty with the product?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like we always say, any workmanship, any defects in workmanship or materials, like if it's a problem that was there from when it was new, then there's no point putting like a year or 2 years limit on that, because it was a defect from new. So the last thing people want is to get something, go, is that a defect? And just run it. If it works, it works. If it's a problem, then if it's 3 years before you come up to what's it matter? We're always very generous with warranty. Case by case, we just go, look, you've had a problem there. That's not what we're about. We'll send you a new one.
Right. So you said it's $90 a tire, but that's with the valve. What is the just the insert part?
So just the insert would be like, I think it's $45, but I'm going off the top of my head. So it's pretty much. Yeah, exactly. And we don't have, because we do BMX stuff, we tend to have good margin, like tight margins, because we've got to keep stuff affordable, and we want people to try it, to ride it, to adopt it. If you have some huge early adopter penalty, then that's not really ideal, is it?
I mean, I think it's good though that the other products, even though they may be a little cheaper, what I'm trying to say is I think the other products being out on the market have already warmed the market up to paying for inserts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, obviously as I've been developing this over the years, I've seen things come out and I've had no idea how much ours is going to end up being. But I've seen them come out and gone, okay, people will pay that. And I think Procore was $100. I think it was a similar level. It might have been $100 each when that first came out. And I thought that's super interesting. But then I looked at all the hassles of mounting it and the weight, and it's like, and that's a very different philosophy, because Procore was, for anyone who wasn't aware, it was like a sort of another tire you had inside your main tire, and then inside that tire you had an inner tube. So you're adding an inner tube and a tire to the weight of your tire and your sealant. And it had a funny little valve that you could switch between, which it would inflate. I'm not sure how durable those were, but it was quite a severe weight penalty. But the pressures they were running, it was a very small tire, so it would sit almost, it would not stick up from the bead very much. Stick up from the side wall of the rim very much, and then you ran it at very high pressure, so it was like a bump stop. So it's like your tire was exactly the same as normal. You can't burp, which obviously is great. And a lot of people, there are still people who are big fans of it because of that total elimination of burping. But in terms of the sort of suspension effect, it was like you go through the tire and then you've just got a bump stop. You've got a hard bump stop in that last 10 millimeters or so, half an inch or so, before you hit your rim. You've got something that's going to try and slow down that impact and stop it, which is a big ask, for an impact to just stop that fast. Whereas our ratio of sort of fill is about 50-50. So you've got about half your tire at the low pressure, half the sort of travel of your tire if you compare it to suspension. And then the next half of your travel is slowly ramping up at just a bit more pressure. So it's like a two-stage, like a ramping up progressive suspension rather than that sudden bump stop. Because, when you bottom out your suspension, that bump stop doesn't do a lot for you.
Yeah, and then that's not really doing anything on the sidewall side of it as well. So, like, to me, that sidewall support means a lot. Like, that's a big portion of it to me, as well as the dampening portion of being able to lower your pressure. But being able to lower your pressure and still have your sidewalls be stiff is like, that's the icing on the cake there, you know, where I think there's some insert out there that to me they're just rim protection, and they're not really doing that other stuff. And to me, then it's like, I don't really care about it in that aspect. Like, if that's all you're doing for me, like, I don't want to spend the money.
Well, yeah, rim protection is quite a big deal, you know, because once your rim is dinged, it's so hard to get, you know, a good, and it burps more easily because you've got that dent where the tire isn't holding as well and stuff.
And I agree there, but I think in my mind, like, the rim protection aspect of it is like, I'm like, well, if I blow up a rim, like, maybe there's a warranty with that. I'm not as concerned about it to just go out and buy inserts just to protect my rims in that scenario, where if I could get a device that allows me to change my tire pressure and like hook up better on the ground and like roll through things and not feel as chattery, and like there's all these other benefits that are like, those mean something to me, where okay, I'm interested in putting my money into that. Whereas if it's just to save my rim, which I think there's a handful of products out there that are like that, to me, that I'm like, I don't really see the point, you know. That's just me, you know. Obviously everybody has their own thing. I guess, you know, maybe it's like a side effect of being in the industry. As long as I have more wheel sets, I'm like,
well, I always have to pay for my rims, so I'm acutely aware of how frustrating it can be to go out first day on a new wheel. And and I've literally done that. I've gone out brand new wheel set and dinged both wheels in one day and gone, you know, that's the worst. I've got to get the Optis in there.
I mean, I've seen it happen. My buddy got a brand new bike, had it was a Scott, had the Synchros like carbon wheels on it. Very first ride on that bike, we were probably 15 minutes into the ride, like one of the first downhill that we hit, and he just took a dinger and like blew up the rim. Like, and it was definitely one of those moments where you're like, oh my God. That, like, there had to be something wrong, you know, like this is horrible.
But I've put a stop to all that now, so I'm, you know,
right,
I can relax a bit.
I mean, so how long have you guys been on market now?
So we launched it basically about Sea Otter, so it's about 2-3 months. So and you know, we're just frantically working to you know, keep up with you know, the developments we want to do with it, like in terms of other sizes and other markets, and you know, trying to talk to race teams. We've got a few people on race teams trying it out, because you know, it can give a competitive edge, and you know, just trying to keep up with all that kind of stuff, because we're only a small company. There's not that many of us, so you know, everyone's doing everything all the time.
Right. So do you feel like this product has really brought more attention to your like mountain bike side?
I mean, it's the first launch thing really for the mountain bike side. So we've got some other stuff in the works, and that's, you know, some of that's hugely ambitious, and some of that's hopefully stuff we get out fairly soon. I hope nothing ends up taking 10-12 years again, but we got some cool bits to come out, and I feel like there's still lots of room for improvement in mountain bikes.
There definitely is.
Sort of being more like BMX, being more just forget about the bike and get on with riding it, rather than you know, having apps to service intervals and when to change a sealant and all this. I mean, you know, which is a great thing, and you know, sealant's always going to, depending on your climate, it's always going to need topping up and replacing and stuff like that. But it kind of spoils the fun when, I mean, I've literally got to rebuild both my fork and my rear shock as soon as this is finished. And it's like, it's not really a job I want to do as often as I seem to have to do it.
No, I can hear you there for sure. One of the places that my mind went while we were talking with the product is like, I wonder how hard it would be to have some kind of electronic system in there to be able to then see what your pressures are,
Yeah.
like app wise or something like that.
Yeah, there was one on Kickstarter a little while ago, which I've backed. There was another one on Kickstarter a little while ago, so I backed. I keep backing them. I've bought the zip ones, which stopped working. They clogged up incident. But the one I backed on Kickstarter, which is Cycle or something like that, I think, which I'm hoping will ship soon. Look like a really good idea. It's just dead simple. Pop it on the inside. And I used to, I had the zip ones. It would connect with my Garmin, and it just it would warn you if your tire pressure dropped. Every time it warned me, it was a false alarm. So
oh no!
It never, I never had a problem, but it doesn't stop you being paranoid about it.
Right.
And, so I was like, I've got an alarm. And they're fine. You just give it a squeeze. That's not 10 psi or whatever you think it's dropped to.
Yeah.
So it would be a great thing if somebody sorted that out. It's not my area, electronics. I'm not really super into that.
Got it.
But I hope this one on Kickstarter does well, and I'm hoping they'll get their act together and get those out, because it'd be a really useful thing to have. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, we don't want any more electronics. Don't want electronic shifters." And I agree in terms of wireless derailleurs and stuff. I don't really need a wireless dropper or a wireless derailleur. I'm just happy, remembering the stuff I've got to remember as it is. But tire pressures are so important. I would happily go to the trouble of that and having that reported to me on my head unit.
Yeah, I hear you there.
And it's extraordinary when you do have that, when it's working, and you go up a mountain, you go, oh my God, look how much my tire pressure's gone up, because the pressure outside has gone down. You go up, a few thousand feet, and your tire pressure's gone up 2 or 3 psi, and you're like, that I can feel that. It's really interesting data to have, and go, if you're going to be up high all day, let your tires down a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of the problems with where I ride in the Tahoe area a lot, and so we'll have rides that maybe you start at 6,000 feet, and in the middle of the ride you're at almost 10, and then you're coming back down to 6 again, and it's like when you're up at the top, you're like, man, my suspension feels like crap, my tires feel like crap, but it's like you don't want to drop the air down, because as you descend, it's going to start feeling like there's definitely a spot in that descent where I'm like, oh, we've dropped enough elevation, like it feels good again, and you're all happy about it, so it's definitely a thing. And it's like it's interesting to think about that, and aspects of in the terms of like, oh, that's a problem that you could actually fix.
Yeah, it's but as you say, if you go to the top and let your tires down a bit, you're going to stop halfway down and put them back up.
Right, yeah.
Maybe with these little electric pumps everybody's doing, maybe people will.
Who knows? Maybe there's a device that goes inside, that goes on the tire, that just like regulates it for you, or something like that. But man, here we are adding more rotational weight to things.
I think stopping halfway down and putting a few psi in. But I mean, also it's just like, if you normally ride, I ride sea level to a couple of thousand feet most of the time. But then if I go somewhere else where I'm riding at higher altitude, then it's worth bearing in mind I run lower pressures for that for that time.
Yeah, the way I try to do it is like typically if I'm riding around home, I pump my tires up in my garage with the compressor, so because I'm lazy. But if I'm going to go ride at altitude, I purposely don't pump my tires until I get up there, and then I check my pressures at least where I'm starting. That way it's like, okay, well, I know that here at this level this will be right, and I know it's going to be a little more harsh up there. But if I was to pump it up at my house, which is basically at sea level, by the time I'm at 6,000, that's already like a huge difference. And then to climb on top of that, it's like, oh yeah, that'd be just awful.
Yeah. Well, at least you're checking your tire pressures every ride.
Yeah.
Number of people who go, I just check them every now and again, and you're like, that's crazy.
I have this buddy that would just always be like destroying wheels, and he was one of those guys that like we'd get to the ride and he'd just like squeeze his tire and he'd be like, oh yeah, no, this is fine. So like after seeing him like blow up all these wheels, at one point I was like, hey, let's start checking your, like, because I'm always checking mine. I'm like, so like, let's check it. He'd be like, oh no, it's good. So I'd give him my electronic like pressure thing, and he'd check it, and it'd be like, dude, you're at 18, man. Like, no wonder you're thinking it's good, but you're thinking you're at 25, but you're at 18, dude. So
yeah.
And I slowly tricked him into now checking his tire pressure every time. So.
You shouldn't have to do that. It should be, but as you say, a little thing in the wheel where it just says on your phone or on your head unit would solve a lot of that.
Yeah, it would be nice then, because like honestly, like if I could just open up the app and see like what my pressure is, then I would know, oh, I don't need to like check it, and
yeah,
it may sound like well, it's not that much of a hassle, but like I said a minute ago, I'm lazy, and I'm always looking for the way to be as lazy as possible. So if not taking out my pump and checking the unscrewing the cap and putting it on, like if I don't have to do all that, I'm down.
yeah. Well, I mean, and the other thing is you check the pressure, and in the process of checking the pressure, you drop it half a psi, whatever, and so you're pumping because you checked.
Right. Well, and then the other thing that I always like have a problem with, and this is why I ended up buying one of those electronic ones, is like, man, pump to pump, those valves are like or the
gauges.
What they tell you the pressure are is like all over the place.
Yeah, you've always got to use the same gauge as well. Yeah. Have you tried the Schwab click valve?
No, I haven't. Have you?
It's really, really good. I would heartily recommend it. Just get some of
that's
those
the one that's like the new fitting where it just like pops on real super easy to like pump
up. Really good. It's really good.
I would love to see a better like if that's the thing that fixes it, like there's definitely need for some innovation there in terms of
it's like $10, get some, and just like you'll be a fan, I'm sure. It's like you can wiggle the head around all you like and it doesn't leak. You just pull the caps off and put them on. Though I notice now they're doing a screw-on cap, and you're like, what are you doing? Half of the beauty is you just pull the cap off.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just pull the cap off, pop the thing on, and if you're using a compressor, I do as well. You just pop it on, it comes up on the gauge, pull it off. It's like, because I've got 4 valves to check every ride.
Right.
But I often don't check the Optis because I know it'll be fine. But the tire's usually lost a PSI or 2.
Does the Optis lose pressure over time, or is it like once every 6 months?
It tends to be solid. It tends to be. If the valves loose, sometimes you get a little bit of leakage there. But generally speaking, no, it's reliable. But it's worth checking it, because with the click valve, you're just pulling the cap off. It takes seconds, so you might as well.
Right. With that click valve, does that do they sell something that changes the way that your pump works?
Yeah, they sell a little adapter to go on the end of on your compressor or on your pump. But the thing that I really liked was, I got the set and I put the click valves on, and I put the adapter chuck they gave you on the compressor, and I'm pumping everything up. And then I went out for a ride and went, oh, I didn't check my pressures. And I got the ordinary, pressure gauge, just pushed it on from the same as the Presta, and it worked absolutely fine. I wanted to put a bit more air in, and I got my little mini pump out with a Presta end on the end and put it on, and it worked absolutely fine. So it's like totally compatible with all my other Presta stuff.
Oh, that was the thing I was worried about, because I have a while back I wanted to slim down everything that I was carrying, and I have one of those 1-up pumps that has the tool inside of it, and I just love that. It's like everything I need, and I just switched that to bike, and that was one of the things I was worried about with those. I was like, man, if I can't use that pump, then it's like now I have to carry something else. I
don't know about that one. Any of the push-on ones seem to work fine. Anything you
it's just a push-on. It doesn't have like a valve though, like a valve lock,
like a little lever.
Yeah. So it sounds like it would work, because when I tried I think you sold me, man. I was really into them when I saw them, and I just was like nervous about spending the money because of that one reason. But it sounds like that's not an issue. So I'm going to be on Amazon after this. So
they've been in short supply. They keep selling out, and even on their own website they haven't got them and stuff. But they are really good. If you can get your hands on some, then they'll send you
that was one of the the things that I didn't like about the reserve ones was like the Santa Cruz ones is like I really liked the idea of it, but then whenever I tried it, like certain pumps, it didn't work. And somebody told me that they updated the design a little bit, and it's not a problem anymore. But the initial ones that I tried, I was like, I couldn't even use my park tool like air compressor chuck because it wouldn't tell me the pressure. Like I couldn't know how much
Yeah.
pressure was in the tire. So yeah, right on. That's awesome. So what are you excited about looking forward with the MTB stuff that you guys are doing?
I don't know how much I can say.
Yeah,
We've
makes
got
sense.
various bits and pieces. So it's I think just watch this space really.
Hmm.
And there's plenty of stuff in the works. It's just a matter of
Yeah,
how long it takes and when it comes out. We usually like to try and keep it fairly to sell it.
yeah, 100%.
So you
Makes
can just
sense.
go, this is it, and you can buy one now or next week or whatever.
Hmm. Do you see this mark like the Optis being useful like in a road situation? You said earlier that it wouldn't make any sense in BMX.
Well, I mean, we're looking at BMX as well, but yeah, road is one of the things we really want to do it on, and we're
Hmm.
working on prototypes for that, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. We've had interest from road cyclists who've seen the mountain bike application and go, that's what I need for road as well, and we're like, yeah, we're working on it, and gravel, obviously, that's
Yeah,
an area
the
where
gravel definitely I could way see it in the gravel side for sure. The the road, they like you were saying earlier that the pressures that people were running have changed dramatically, and it's really about like, oh well, if you run a lower pressure, then you have more like, let's just say like less body fatigue and stuff like that, and then you have better grip in some scenarios, but then the rolling resistance isn't as bad as maybe what people thought a long time ago. Like if you weren't running like 120 psi a while back, like it's like you're doing it wrong, you know. And
yeah,
now a lot of those same people are running 80.
yeah, and it's what can you get away with. It's not what pressure do you want, it's what can you get away with, and
Yeah,
that's I want to bring it out to so you just go, this is the pressure I want, and I can run it.
yeah, I can really see it in the gravel market though too, where it's like, man, with my gravel bike, I definitely would run lower pressures, but it's always like, oh, if I run that low, then it's not gonna, like the sidewall support won't be there at all. You
Yeah,
know?
well, and if you burp, it's you've got even less. It's even more serious if you're going because you tend to have quite high speeds and stuff.
Right.
So high and road as well. You could potentially have really high speeds, tubeless burp, and it's going to be a really horrible, horrible crash.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It definitely way more catastrophic. There
I mean,
had to
we
be
saw
go ahead.
so we saw quite a lot of incidents like that on some of the road cycling recently, the professional tours of the Paris-Roubaix and stuff like that, where somebody was tubeless and running a low pressure and couldn't get away with it and burped and took everyone down.
Yeah.
Several
Well, and I
incidents.
think the faster and I think I'm thinking about this correctly, but like the faster you're going, the more, let's just say like G forces that you would have in a turn. So that additional speed makes it like it's giving it more leverage to pull the tire off the rim versus like a mountain bike where you would be going maybe half that or a quarter of that speed. You know, does that make, is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
accurate? Yeah.
To a certain extent, it depends on the surface and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff, because we tend to have quite good grip, so you can push quite hard on
Yeah.
a mountain bike, which you might not push as. I don't really ride gravel bikes, so I don't know how
Yeah.
hard to push them and stuff and road bikes, but certainly the higher speed means you have a lot more energy because
Right.
when you crash, the thing you're doing is dissipating energy with your
Right.
shoulder or your face or
Right.
whatever, and the
Right.
more energy there is, the worse that's going to be. And
Right.
kinetic energy, which is the energy you're trying to dissipate, goes as the square of your speed. So if you go twice as fast, you've got 4 times as much energy.
Right.
So it gets serious pretty quickly.
Right.
And it's amazing what you see road cyclists doing, the speeds they're going, and you think you're wearing no protective gear and you're going so fast next to such dangerous obstacles. Like even if there's a crash barrier, hitting that crash barrier at those speeds is going to be awful. And they are very brave guys.
Yeah. No, they're definitely. I get nervous on my gravel bike when I get up to speeds that even are, like I'd say anything over like 30 miles an hour, where like on my mountain bike I could be over 30 and I feel like I'm not worried about it because you have all the suspension and everything, but man, you're on that road bike or the gravel bike and you're like, at least to me, I'm like, man, I don't know how some of those guys like in the Tour de France, the speeds that they're hitting coming down those mountains and stuff.
It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. I'm definitely not built for that. So are you guys thinking with Odyssey that you want to keep building out like the mountain bike side, or you're just gonna solve problems as you see them come up?
Yeah, I mean it's solving problems. So from my point of view, this is always my driving force is just I want my bike to feel as nice as possible, to ride how I want to ride it, give me as little trouble as possible, be as light as possible, do as much stuff as possible. So I hack up my own bikes to get them how I like them, and where there isn't a product, I'll make it, and and just keep trying to make it better. So if those are a product, I mean, some stuff isn't a product. It's just what I like, and I can sometimes go, right, nobody else wants that, so that's just for me. But other times it's like, well, that could be a product, and we've got people we know would want that. Let's do that. But we're not just going to go. Everyone else is doing 32-inch wheels, so we'll do 32-inch wheels. It's like, no, that's not us.
Yeah. Just not doing it just for the sake of making another product, doing it for like we feel like we're solving some problem or bringing something to the market.
Yeah, I mean we're a fairly small company. There's just the few of us doing it, and that we want to ride. We don't have the resources. If we put them into doing something we're not into, we'd have to cut something we did want to do. So we'll just want to do what we want to do, and hopefully that makes a company that works and that other people are stoked on and want the stuff as well. And we're not just got a CNC shop that we need to keep busy or something.
Right. How's the reception been since you guys launched at Sea Otter?
Really good. I mean, everyone who's tried it has been like really into it, and kind of become evangelical about it and stuff like that. The problem is launching at Sea Otter. We're a small company, and amongst the noise of other exciting things being launched, our splash is limited. But we're talking to race teams as they hopefully come to realize the benefits and adopt it. That will send a clear message. That's better marketing than we can afford to do through sponsoring Instagram and stuff like that. It's not really us,
Yeah. Sea Otter's tough, like I was there and I didn't see you guys, but there's every year I go and I come home and then I'm looking at Pink Bike and they're showing some product of some other tent, that I just walked right past, and it's like, wow, it's so easy there to like miss stuff there because there's so much. So it's like definitely
Yeah, I mean, but in many ways we don't mind that it's a slow start, really, because we can't just instantly ramp up production, and we can't just instantly sort out distribution and everything. All that's going to take time anyway. So we've got people on it who are enjoying it, and it's selling fine. It'll build up speed as it goes, and we've got our hands full dealing with what we have to deal with. So it's I'm super keen for people to try it because I want them to enjoy it, and I want them to ride their bikes and get more enjoyment out of riding the bikes. And if I can bring enjoyment to people riding their bikes, I'm happy. But it would be good to get it out there.
Yeah. how'd that feel to you, like 12 years later, to have
Yeah,
this
no,
product?
pretty crazy. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good to have
Yeah.
finally got it out, and where somebody rides it and gets it and goes, oh yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That's really good. Then that's very satisfying.
I think you like knocked it out of the park as far as like the problems with the other inserts versus what you got. Like you guys really cut the weight down. The other one that is, you know, the biggest probably thing with all the other inserts is the install. And I mean, from what you're explaining, it doesn't sound like it's any different than me putting a tire on a rim. You know, realistically, it's like I don't have
Yeah,
anything extra to deal with because it's not pushing against the wheel whenever I'm putting, or the rim while I'm putting the tire on. It
yeah,
was
you can just
typical.
let the air out of it, so it just gets out of the way while you're doing the tire. So
Yeah,
it's not a factor. And then as you put it on, it actually helps seat the tire
right.
because you can inflate it first, and it gets those
Yeah,
beads started moving out towards where they're supposed to be, and holds them against the rim so you can get air into the outer chamber. So typically, I can install a tire with an Optis more easily than without an Optis because the tubeless process of getting it
yeah.
to hold air and inflate the tire goes a lot more smoothly.
So when you're installing it, you put the tire on. Do you just put like 5 pounds of pressure in the Optis or something like that, and
Not even
then
that.
heat the rest of
Usually,
it?
usually like a psi, just enough so it starts to take a shape. Not even a
Uh-huh.
measurable pressure really.
Right, and then you would put it on the, like, where you're putting air into the regular tire, and then like listen to it hit the, like, pop into the bead normally.
Oh, sorry, no, sorry. I thought you meant so you'd normally mount one bead of the tire, put the
Uh-huh.
Optis in, or it depends. If you're putting it in an existing tire, just break one bead and then pop it in.
Yeah.
And for that stage, I would do like just a tiny bit of pressure so it just holds its shape a little bit. Then once
Uh-huh.
you've got the other bead of the tire on and you've got your sealant in, then pressurize the Optis to say, I know 20 psi or something like that, and
Uh-huh.
that would close up any gaps. So then you can pump up the main volume and it should seat, really easily.
Got
Um,
it. So
and
so
then
you
the
do
rest of
have,
the
so when you're putting the tire in, the Optus shouldn't be totally deflated.
no, it's just a tiny bit of air, just enough so it's
Uh-huh.
not sucked flat like it is when it arrives,
Got it.
so that it
Okay.
just a bit more handleable.
Got it. Okay. And then you're saying, so at that point you wouldn't, like for me, what I normally do when I'm mounting a tire is I put it on the rim. I have my valve core out, and then I will put the compressor on it, and I'll blow it up to 40 just to like hear everything pop into place. Then I
Yeah,
let all the air out, and then I put my sealant in. So
yeah, you can do it that
what
way.
you're so with your system, you would have like a couple of psi in there, put the tire on, and then you could still do that, or would you recommend that you start pumping, like raising the pressure on the Optus first before you put like the max pressure in the tire, just to kind of
Yeah,
make
I
sure?
would I would put some air in the so I because I've done it a fair few times now.
Right.
I just mount the tire, get the Optis in there, put the sealant in there, finish mounting the tire, put some
Hmm.
pressure in the Optis, and then pump the tire up. And as you say, take
Got
it
it.
to like 40 psi to help it stretch into shape.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but usually I can do that all with just an ordinary um, track pump. I don't need a
yeah,
charge pump or a compressor or
yeah,
anything.
yeah. I would imagine like I mean, the only reason I'm using the compressor is like really I'm just lazy. I mean, most tires seem to seat well, but yeah, I didn't even think about that, in some
It's the
circumstances.
tire rim combo really. There are
Yeah,
some. It seems to be some combinations of a very tight tire and a
right.
very big rim or a lot of tape. If people put two layers of tape round, that they can think, oh, I'll do two layers of tape. That'll be great, and you make your life so difficult.
Yeah,
So it's the combination. It's the tire and the rim together, and if you've got a combo that works
yeah.
well, it tends to be fairly easy. And
It's
some are
funny you
just
mentioned that about the tape, because I've done that in the past, where I had like a tire where I was having issues with or a wheel, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna wrap it twice, and then I ended up realizing like it just made things more difficult. I was like,
I mean, if it's a loose one, yeah, that's a totally
yeah,
valid,
yeah,
a valid thing to do. If you've got a tire that's a bit loose and is, seats too easily.
yeah,
But when people have got trouble, you go, "Have you got 2 wraps of tape on here?" And they go, "Yeah." You go, "Yeah, there you go."
yeah, right. So I think, there's one thing that we haven't talked about is what about the scenario of you rip your tire and you have no pressure in that, but your Optis is fine. Can you ride out on it? Like, what's the?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want anyone to hurt themselves above everything, so I'm
Right.
always going to say it's a temporary run flat.
Yeah.
So the main thing is, if you're barreling down a hill, if you're on a full descent and you puncture a tire, it's gonna you know keep you rolling in a predictable way, so you can come to a stop and not be
Yeah.
out of control, or not be more out of control than you need to be. So the tire's going to wobble a bit if it's got no air in it, but it's
Right.
going to be a lot more supported, and it's not going to start burping, it's not going to start coming off the rim, so you can
Right.
come to a stop and not die. You
Yeah.
can then go, I can't mend this tire, I'm going to pedal out on a fire road safely.
Right.
And pedal at 10 miles an hour is a hell of a lot better than walking.
Right.
And do that by all means. You
Yeah, the
can
big point that you made
just
there too is normally like if you ripped a tire that was like really bad, like it would come right off the wheel, and then that could be like get stuck up
tangle up and
in
lock the
things.
back wheel, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it could be all kinds of problems that happen there. You end up like ripping your derailleur off or something like that.
yeah,
So the idea that it keeps it on as well, that I didn't even think about that.
yeah. So I'm always going to say it as it's a temporary run flat.
Yeah.
I have done a run and just kept going and gone, well, I'm just going to I'm nearly at the bottom, but I can't recommend that, because
Yeah.
obviously you might have a situation where the Optis is in direct contact with the ground, and
Right.
getting braking forces through it against sharp rocks or something, and
Yeah.
somebody could potentially lose control. But it is pretty good on a run flat, but it's certainly enough
Yeah.
to get you out of the wilderness and
Yeah.
back to your car, back to somewhere you can get a tire, back to somewhere you can do a proper repair.
Yeah, which would be like, in some cases, like you said, I mean, it is a lot faster than walking, and I've definitely been in scenarios where, it's
And
like,
if
oh,
somebody's in
shit,
a race run,
I'm
they're gonna just
yeah,
keep going. You can't tell them to stop, and it
right,
would bring benefits in that scenario.
yeah. Well, and it also like you said though, I mean, just the ability to be able to still ride out in although maybe slower, like that in itself is also like a big plus as well, because I mean, I've been in a situation where I had to carry my bike out, and that sucked
Yeah,
for a couple
I've
miles.
walked more miles than I would like to
Yeah,
in that situation, and gone. You get back on and try and pedal a bit and go, no, I can't do this. It's
yeah. How about, have you had any problems with like I know sometimes I've broken spokes, and then the spoke pushes through the like tape, and then makes problems that way. Do you have any issues
no, I've
with
not
it?
had a problem. As I say, it's incredibly tough material.
Yeah,
So it would have to, the spoke would have to, I mean, firstly, your spoke shouldn't really be that proud of the nipple inside. If it
yeah,
is, it suggests your spokes are a little bit too long, but fair enough.
yeah,
Or your nipple might be a bit chewed up.
yeah,
And it will, if it's loose for a long time, I know what you mean, it'll chew through the tubeless tape,
yeah.
because it'll have a few goes at it. But the tire is the Optis is a lot tougher than
Right.
the tubeless tape.
So it wouldn't be a problem.
So if you rode long enough, I mean, once you're through the tubeless tape, you've got a puncture, so your tire's going to go down anyway.
Yeah,
And if you just keep riding on that, and it was chewing away at the Optis, then it would take a lot. I guess eventually it might go through, but it's never anything
yeah.
it's never happened to me.
It's not something that you've like run into.
And I have broken spokes, but I've never even had a puncture from a broken spoke, to be honest, because usually I notice the spoke and
Yeah,
just
I was thinking about it. It must be like dependent on the type of wheel that you have, because I've had some wheels where like the nipple isn't on the inside of the rim, like it tightens at the hub or something like that. I'm trying to remember because I remember I had one particular set of wheels. I think it was a set of Envies, and like the way that the spokes were ran from them. If I broke a spoke, a lot of times it would puncture my tape. Whereas like the wheels I'm running right now, I definitely haven't had that problem, and I just recently like blew up like 2 or 3 of them, and so yeah, maybe it was just something to do with that wheel, the way that wheel was. But anyways, man, we're wrapping up on 2 hours here, dude, and
Yeah.
it's really fun
No,
chatting with
it's been very interesting talk. Yeah.
you. Yeah, I always like to ask, do you like to watch YouTube like outside of like for fun?
Yeah, no, well, it's all bikes. I'm afraid
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just all bikes. But yeah, you know, I watch a lot of bike content on YouTube and stuff. And
So I always ask people what some of their favorite channels are to watch, just to sometimes there's
I don't know if I
somebody.
should be ashamed of it, but I really like Sam Pilgrim.
Oh yeah, no, he's super good.
He's so positive. I watched one of his videos. I just want to go riding, so I don't
Yeah.
care if he's mainstream as hell and too popular because I really like his stuff.
I'll tell you what, I didn't know, like I didn't watch his content for a long time, and just because I don't typically follow like racers or like professional athletes like that, and but his stuff started coming up in the feed, and just he has some really fun videos, and he just does things where you're like, hey, he's such a phenomenal rider, but then he does it like on these like janky ass bikes or something like that, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my god, this is insane.
Yeah, no, I find his video. Obviously he does some terrible ones. There's some that I'm like, oh god, please put the electric motorbike away. But
Right.
you know, other ones like he built a longboard the other day. Like a stupidly long longboard, 8 foot long longboard, and then just rode it around a car park with his brother. And you're just like, how can you be mad at that? That was
Right.
So yeah, no, I really like him.
Yeah, no, his channel's super fun to watch. Well, like I said a minute ago, it's been awesome talking
Yeah,
with you,
no, you too.
and really, really fun getting to know the about the inserts themselves, as well as the company that you work with that also seems to have like several like kind of, it's like an umbrella of a handful of different
Yeah. So it's Fairdale, Odyssey, Sunday, and G Sport.
right on. Well, if any of you guys are interested in checking it out, definitely there's links in the show description. So get you over to the website. You can take a look at the inserts, maybe pick up a set. And if you just want to do something for free, remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.